Hi everyone, welcome to the community classroom. We are going to be addressing the issue of lost in translation with respect to not only the King James Bible, but some other versions. Now, the issue we're going to be addressing is the identity of God with the big G being indicated in the plural. And this, you see it in the King James Version 1611 with words such as us and our. Now, there are many explanations out there for why this is the case. Some entities indicate that this is a reference to the Trinity. Some indicate that this is in reference to God with a little g and then an S on the end, so gods or angels. And so there are a number of explanations for the plain language that is indicated in Genesis. And we're going to look at this plain language because it's very confusing. And then when you try to trace those words that suggest this plural identity, this polytheistic dynamic, you will find that you're not going to find what you think you will find that would support this idea of this polytheistic identity, this plurality, and that is indicated and stated in Genesis. So let's just delve into this question here. So in researching another topic, actually, this came up, and it is Genesis 1:26, and it states, and God said, there's no plural there. It says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And so after you have this singular with the big G, and then you have these three indicators of plurality. However, when you attempt to research this plurality to get an understanding of the simple word us and the simple word our, you hit a roadblock. And so I want you to note something here. You don't see the word our by itself. You see it as a phrase. And this is troubling because either you don't have a word for each of the words in here in terms of the translation, or someone has inserted some things here. So again, you have this phrase here, but what we are looking for is what is meant by this word our. And what's interesting is in one translation, you see that the our is capitalized. And so that's the NAS, but the KJV has it in lowercase. And here when you look at the strong study tools, you get three different places to look for this concept that's basically within a sentence. And you see that it leads you to Hebrews 62:13 and 67:54 and 18:23 for this word or this construct in this sentence, in this statement. And so when you go into those reference points, you will find that you still are going to be hitting a roadblock. As you can see here, when we go to the reference, there is no indicator with respect to what the word our means. All you see is image. And here's more information about image. Still nothing for the word our. And this is an extremely important word given that the religions that come out of this particular scripture, the religions are considered monotheistic. However, again, you have this polytheistic dynamic going on that's being suggested. And it's very odd because you would think with King James and all the resources he had in terms of scholarship, that the scholars working on this particular version would have been very clear about this direct translation that was supposed to be going on. Moving right along, you have an indicator about the idea of make, but still us, our is missing. On to the next reference point. Again, you don't see anything with reference to the very important word of our. Now, what's interesting is the word us uh, with respect to this scripture. When you look in the hard copy of the Strong's Concordance, you find us in the index. And when you find us in the index, it refers you to Hebrews 22:48. Now, this is interesting, as you will see, because it does not indicate this idea of we or our or us. So the hard copy of Strong's leads you to this particular word. This is in 2248, and it is kabula, which means a hurtful act or a crime. And then there's a theme that runs through, because then you get referred to a variety of other words. Now, what's interesting also is you see a change in the characters in terms of the writing from one type of what would be considered Hebrew to something else. And you can see this here. And then it's referring you to this word that is basically cabal, again, a hurtful act or crime. And this also looks like it is related to what you would consider to be a cabal in modern language. And so here we see again that this word our, this idea of us, is translating to a root that is related to the Aramaic. This is important because it's understood that that would have been the original language. However, it's unclear as to why there is all of this jumping around with respect to this translation. So there should be a direct translation, and there should be something that indicates this idea of us or our or we, but that is not what we are finding. So here we see that this word us, this construct of us, according to the Strong's Concordance Index, again is relating to this idea of crime or hurt. Also this idea of being overthrown. So that which has been overthrown is what it looks like it's indicating here, and something that is morally hurt, something related to crime. And again, there are a number of reference points once you get into that 2248, and then it refers you to 2255, again, still with this theme of hurt, but then it goes on to indicate to destroy. And so this being made in the image is related to destroy. Also, the likeness of us is related to destroy. It's not, according to this, it does not appear to be related to this idea of plurality with respect to God with the big G or a little g. And then it goes on, and you've got destroyed, destroyed, harmed, again going back to the Aramaic. And you have additional language that is indicating to ruin, destroy, hurt, with respect to this word, our, this construct, us. Now, something is clearly amiss here. Now, it's either in this King James translation or it's in this Strong's Concordance that is making this reference to this 2248 through 2255, 54. And so this one is translated as to act corruptly, acting corruptly, ruin, bringing on destruction, broken, offending. And this is also the translation, the language that is used in the discussion about the what would be considered the fall of man in that particular scripture in Genesis 3:22. And just to jump over into the English language, dealing with the word that looks substantially similar to what's in Strong's Concordance. And you see here that cabal is basically talking about plotting, conspiracies, cabal, secretly devising things to do evil or treachery, those who are involved in duplicity and secret agreements and things like that, doing wrong, being hurtful, engaged in plotting evil. And so those words, interestingly, are apparently related. And so let's carry on here. Now, this is when it gets odd. If you then go to 2248 in the Greek, the word us somehow means what you would typically think of as the word us or the construct of our. However, what makes this odd is that the Old Testament is translated coming out of the Hebrew, according to King James and the translations that are used. And so there's no reason why one would need to go into the Greek from the New Testament in order to then go backwards to interpret this word or this construct of us or our. But that's exactly what's going on. This is very odd because, again, it says 2248. But then when you look in 2248 in the Hebrew, you have one dynamic, which is what we just discussed. And then you have this odd dynamic of getting to this idea of us or our in the Greek in 2248. And so this, again, either you've got something going on with the translation of the King James and a number of other versions because they are using the same construct, or there is something going on with the Strong's Concordance. And here you can see what we are talking about. You see in the Greek, Strong's Concordance 2248, all of a sudden you see this idea of our, us, and we. Now it's unclear how this is possible and how this translation is getting mixed up like this between the Greek and the Hebrew. The numbers, the reference numbers are the same in terms of 2248, but when you look in the Hebrew, those references are not the same as these. These words are not translating the same way. This is the one that you would think it would be to support this idea of polytheism or that there is multiplicity indicated in Genesis. However, the Greek in the New Testament is not what you would use in order to understand the meaning of the words in the Old Testament. So this is a very odd dynamic. And we're just going to wrap this up here. And again, you see our, us, we. And then you see that it is an accusative case, plural, of ego. So it goes into Greek ego. So you can look that up if you want to do a little bit more exploration on that. If this is something that you already have an answer to, that would be great. There has been extensive research done trying to get an understanding of how other people were understanding that construct of us or our. And the understanding, as far as the research has gone, is that people have understood it to mean the general idea of us, our, we. However, when you go into the translations and you look at the King James Version, you see that there isn't really, according to the translation, a word our or us in there. And so it looks like it was perhaps inserted in there. However, what's also odd here is that if you just take a trip down Greek lane and you go into the Greek, mysteriously, here this word and this construct happens to be where theoretically you wouldn't expect to find it. There's no correlation where 2248 in the Greek and the Hebrew are the same, and so there's no clear understanding as to why this confusing dynamic is going on. Again, King James had access to many scholars, and it would be unconscionable that they were not cognizant of the fact that this word was missing somehow. However, it entered into that scripture. And so there needs to be some indication as to how that word us and how the construct of our ended up there, particularly when you look in Strong's Concordance and you can't see it by itself except when you look in the index, and then it tells you in the index what you should be looking for. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.